All right, picture this. You're at a concert, music's blasting, everyone's having a good time,
Yeah.
and then suddenly, alarms.
Oh,
Everything changes, everyone needs to get out, and you need to get out fast.
right.
Do you know how to make sure that you and the people around you actually get out safely?
Hmm.
Today, we're looking at some research that completely changes how we think about evacuations.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of looking at like building design or fancy algorithms, this research is like, what if the key is actually tweaking human behavior?
Yeah, it's a fascinating approach. It really does flip the script.
Yeah, and we have an expert with us today who can kind of unpack all these insights and connect this research to what happens in the real world.
Great to be here.
So let's just jump right in.
Yeah.
First, we'll talk about the strategies that can actually help you and others get out safely, and then we'll talk about the things that people think help them but could actually put them at risk.
Love it.
So where do we even begin with this?
Well, to really get into this, we're going to be looking at a study by Milad Haghani and Maziar Yostani from the University of New South Wales.
Okay.
And what's so cool about this study is that it goes beyond just like computer simulations. It actually puts hundreds of real people into these kind of like temporary evacuation situations.
Wow.
So they actually built these environments with different exits,
Yeah.
and everything's the same width. So it's a fair comparison.
Okay.
They've got these HD cameras, motion tracking software,
Oh, wow.
recording everything.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
So they've got their participants, they've got the setup.
Right.
But what are they actually looking at? What are they tracking?
So they were really interested in two decisions that people make when they're evacuating.
Okay.
The first one is exit choice, which is just which exit do you go to when the alarm goes off.
Right.
And then exit choice adaptation,
Yeah.
which is basically, do you stick with your initial choice or do you switch if you see a faster line?
Oh, that's so interesting because I feel like everybody has that dilemma. Right, like you're at the grocery store, you're at the airport.
You're always second guessing.
Yeah, and in an emergency, it's even more high stakes.
Absolutely. And what the researchers wanted to know was if you could actually influence those decisions by giving people instructions,
Uh-huh.
would that actually make the whole process more efficient?
So what'd they find? What actually works?
All right, so one of the most effective strategies, and this might be a bit surprising,
Okay.
is what they call follow the minority.
Follow the minority.
Yeah.
So what does that even mean?
Okay, so instead of like, going to the exit everyone else is using,
Right.
you go to the one that the least number of people are using.
So like ditch the nearest exit?
Sometimes, yeah.
Isn't that kind of risky? Like, especially if you're in a panic situation, people aren't thinking clearly?
It might seem counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but you have to think when everyone runs towards the same exit,
Mm-hmm.
you get bottlenecks.
Okay. Yeah.
You get those big crowds, it slows everything down.
Yep.
So if you can spread people out more evenly
Hmm.
across all the exits, even if they're not the closest,
Uh-huh.
you can actually get everyone out faster.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And it plays on how people kind of act in crowds anyway.
Exactly, that herd mentality.
Okay, so is there data to support this? Does this actually pan out?
Yeah, they looked at the total time it took for everyone to evacuate.
Okay.
And the groups that were told to follow the minority
Uh-huh.
were way more likely to choose the least crowded exit.
Wow.
And so the evacuation times in those scenarios were much faster.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So follow the minority, got it.
Okay.
What about that whole should I switch lines thing?
Right. So that's the exit choice adaptation.
Okay.
And basically, yeah, they found if you're willing to change your exit, if you see a shorter queue, it can make a huge difference.
I mean, yeah, because even in everyday life, you're always like trying to find the fastest line.
Absolutely.
You get new information, you change your choice.
You adapt.
Yeah.
And so they found that people who were specifically told to be adaptable, to look for those shorter lines,
Yeah.
were much more likely to actually switch,
Oh, interesting.
which again led to faster evacuations.
So it's all about being flexible
Right.
and responsive to like the changing situation.
Exactly.
But I'm wondering if these strategies are so good, like why don't we see them more?
That's a great question. And it's probably a combination of things.
Yeah.
Maybe people just aren't aware of these strategies.
Right.
Maybe they just panic and their instincts take over.
Yeah.
Or maybe they think that doing what everyone else is doing is just the safest bet.
Which is not always the case.
Right. And that's something that we're going to debunk in the next part of this deep dive.
Okay, so in part 2, we're going to talk about some of the misconceptions about evacuations and why those could actually make things worse.
Sounds good.
Stay with us.
So, we were talking about how some of the things people think are safe in an evacuation
Right.
might actually not be the best idea.
Yeah, so let's debunk some myths. What are some of these bad strategies that the researchers found?
So one of the most surprising things was just how much following the majority can actually slow things down.
Really?
Yeah.
But isn't there something to that whole, like, safety in numbers thing? Like,
Hmm.
going where most people are going, maybe you'll find some help or somebody who knows what to do?
You would think so, right? But actually,
Yeah.
it kind of works against you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because if everyone's going towards the same exit,
Uh-huh.
you're going to have a bottleneck.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to squeeze through the same door.
It's like a traffic jam, but with people.
Exactly. And in a real emergency,
Yeah.
every second counts.
Right. That could be really dangerous.
Absolutely. And the study actually showed
Okay.
that sometimes following the crowd made the evacuation almost 3 times less efficient.
Oh, wow. 3 times. That's a big difference.
It is. So yeah, that safety in numbers thing,
Yeah.
not always true.
Not always true. Okay.
Yeah.
So follow the crowd. No.
Right.
What about the opposite? What about people who, like, stubbornly stick to their initial choice, even if it's not working out?
Yeah. So the researchers call this non-adaptive decision making,
Okay.
which is basically you pick an exit and you just stick with it,
Yeah.
no matter what.
Oh, I see what you mean, even if, like, a better option pops up.
Right. And that actually led to the same kind of problems,
Oh.
like the bottlenecks and the delays.
So it's like if you're driving and you see traffic up ahead,
Yeah.
but you're like, no, I'm sticking to my route.
Exactly. You could end up stuck.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, I should have switched.
You should have adapted.
Okay, so we talked about follow the crowd. We talked about, like, never changing your mind.
Right.
What about just going to the nearest exit? Like, that seems like it should always be the best option.
That's the thing. It does seem like the most obvious choice.
Yeah.
But the research actually found that sometimes the nearest exit is actually the most congested.
Oh, that's interesting. So you could end up, like, right in the thick of it,
You could.
when if you'd gone a little bit further, you might have gotten out quicker.
Exactly.
Wow, that's so counterintuitive.
It is. But it highlights the importance of
Yeah.
like taking a second to assess the situation.
Right.
Don't just blindly follow your first instinct.
Okay, so we've got all these misconceptions, right?
Yeah.
We've got to kind of retrain our brains for these emergency situations.
You do.
But did they find that everyone needs to be doing the good strategies for it to actually work?
That's a good question. And the answer is no.
Really?
Yeah. They actually found that even if just a small percentage of people were using these better strategies,
Oh, wow.
it could still make a big difference.
So even if it feels like you're the only one, like, not following the crowd,
Yeah.
you could actually be helping everyone.
You could. They saw improvements even when it was only like 20% of people.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side,
Yeah.
if people are doing the bad strategies,
Right. Those actually have a much stronger negative impact.
so the bad choices can actually hurt more than the good choices help.
They can.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. They found that if everyone was using those bad strategies, it could be up to like 276% less efficient.
So it could take almost 3 times longer.
It could, yeah.
Wow, that's kind of scary.
It is. It really shows how important it is to
Yeah.
spread the word about these good strategies
Right.
and kind of debunk all those myths.
So we know the strategies, we've busted the myths.
Yeah.
But the big question I think a lot of people are probably thinking is, would we actually remember any of this if we were in a real emergency?
That is the question.
Right. Like, it's one thing to sit here and talk about it calmly,
Yeah.
but when the adrenaline's pumping,
Yeah.
it's a whole different ball game.
It is. And that's what we're going to talk about in part 3 of this deep dive.
All right, so stay with us. Welcome back to our deep dive. You know, we've been talking about how to make evacuations safer and more efficient.
Right.
We've talked about some really interesting strategies
We have.
and debunked some common myths.
Yeah.
But the big question for me is, would we actually remember any of this in a real emergency?
It's a good question.
I mean, it's easy to talk about it now,
Yeah.
but what happens when you're in that situation?
When the adrenaline's going.
Yeah, the alarm's blaring.
Yeah, you kind of go into that fight or flight mode,
Exactly.
and it's hard to think straight.
So is there anything we can do to, like, make sure this information actually sticks?
Well, the researchers actually talk about that.
Oh, they do.
They do.
Okay.
And they say one of the most important things is to keep the strategies simple.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. The easier they are to remember,
Right.
the better chance you have of recalling them under pressure.
Yeah, follow the minority is definitely a lot easier to remember than
Right.
trying to figure out some complicated map. But even with simple strategies, how do we make sure we don't just, like, revert back to our instincts?
Right. Well, one thing they suggest is
Yeah.
training and practice.
Okay, so like fire drills.
Exactly.
You just do it over and over.
Yeah, it becomes like muscle memory,
Right.
so you don't even have to think about it. You just react.
So we should be practicing these evacuation strategies too.
I think so. Even
Yeah.
just visualizing yourself in those scenarios,
Okay.
thinking about what you would do.
So like, I'm in a crowded theater and there's a fire.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to look for the exit with the fewest people.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're training your brain
I like it.
to respond in a way
Yeah.
that keeps you safe.
And if we started doing this like with kids,
Oh, absolutely.
school,
Yeah. Imagine if we integrated this into like safety programs.
that would be amazing.
Yes. Start them young.
Yeah, it's like stop, drop, and roll.
Exactly.
Everyone knows that.
Exactly.
It's so simple.
Right.
But it's probably saved so many lives.
Yep.
We need to do the same thing with these evacuation strategies.
And even on a larger scale,
Yeah.
we need to raise awareness,
Right.
like public awareness campaigns,
I love it.
to really spread the word about these strategies.
It's about empowering people
Yes.
to make good choices, but also understanding that
Yeah.
you're not just responsible for yourself.
Right. Everyone's actions
Yeah,
affect everyone else,
absolutely.
especially in a crowd.
Well, I think that's a great point to end on.
Yeah.
So to wrap up this deep dive, remember that understanding these strategies
Yeah.
can actually help you protect yourself and the people around you.
Absolutely.
So think about how you can apply these insights to your own life
Yeah.
and how we as a society can create a culture of smarter and safer evacuations.
That's what it's all about.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.